There is a new world upon us. This world is greatly influenced and controlled by different technological advancements. These advancements have impacted almost every aspect of life as we know it. However, the developments in cyberspace do not come without concern, one of the largest concerns being that of cyber warfare. This presentation will go over the new challenges towards the military, business, government, and society in the United States. First, let's look at the military challenges. This involves defense strategy, international conflicts, and foreign threats. Cyberwar has redefined the types of defense strategies used to protect this country. With constant change in the field of technology, it is of utmost importance to keep defense strategy updated. A large part of that defense is having a dedicated branch of military monitoring cyberspace. This is a relatively new concept, and only since 2009 did the United States establish the U.S. Cyber Command. This command is in charge of all cyber resources regarding the defense of the country. The birth of this branch of the military came out of necessity to defend rather than the ability to attack. The real challenge that the United States and their cyber command is faced with is deciding what exactly the best defense strategy is. This involves taking all available resources to maintain technological superiority over outside entities. This is much easier said than done. To gain a better understanding of the challenge, it is beneficial to look at the past international conflicts and current foreign threats. Doing so provides insights into what is needed for an effective cyber defense strategy. The United States has been involved with a number of international cyber conflicts and threats. The largest, however, and most famous of these conflicts deals with a virus named Stuxnet. The Stuxnet virus was reportedly the first weaponized computer virus to target a specific industry. It is believed to be built by both the United States and Israel, though neither side has taken responsibility for it. Stuxnet's goal was to disable Iranian centrifuges that could be used for separating nuclear material. This was done by targeting machines that ran the same software that Iran was using. It is reported that almost 2,000 of these centrifuges were either damaged or destroyed. It is one of the first known viruses that cause damage to physical infrastructure and plays a large role in showing the power that cyber attacks can have on the physical world. Other than the Stuxnet virus, there are many other foreign threats to be considered. For instance, China, North Korea, and Russia all represent nations that possess the technology and skills to attack. It's likely that all three of these countries have, or currently have, infiltrating systems within the country. Deputy Assistant FBI Director Michael Vadas has stated that we have concrete information about several foreign countries that are developing programs to target the U.S. and our critical infrastructure in particular. The world has seen the power some of these attacks can have. The mainstream media is constantly reporting about Chinese-backed hackers who are trying to steal government secrets or corporate data. The Korean hackers have recently found fame when they decided to hack Sony Pictures Entertainment, and the Russian-backed hackers show the power of their technical skills when, in Estonia in 2008, they briefly upset the operations of some of Estonia's government organizations, including telephone access to the emergency services. All three of these examples are important reminders of what foreign countries are capable of. Not only do these conflicts and threats show the power of individual countries, it also demonstrates what is possible for all. This is extremely important when considering cyber defense strategy. If the technology exists, it can be used by anyone. A top professor from the U.S. Naval School says that advanced information systems are in themselves both tools and targets. A good military cyber strategy involves balancing both defensive and offensive tactics. These tactics are ever-changing, and nothing is permanent when it comes to technology. This is the nature of the beast, and one that the United States needs to forever keep in mind. Next, we will look at the challenges that cyber warfare brings to businesses and organizations in the United States. Dealing with cybersecurity is a large task and is a somewhat new concept for many companies to consider. There are always new vulnerabilities and exploits being used to attack different entities. Keeping customers' information private, securing data, and preventing theft are all part of the challenge. In this modern technological age, information is one of the most valuable resources. That puts the private sector on the front lines of the cyber war. Often, large businesses hold a vast amount of private and sensitive information. Even with the millions of dollars being spent on strategies to keep this information safe, it is still a large and growing concern. Even with the millions of dollars being spent on strategies to keep this information safe, it is still a large and growing concern. It is large and growing because that is the nature of technology and always will be. This seems like a cycle that will never stop. Systems integrate our personal information, the greater the incentives for foreign hackers or criminals. This seems like a cycle that will never stop and plays a large role in why businesses and organizations are struggling to keep information private. Also, many companies own the critical infrastructure such as telecommunications networks, banking systems, electrical grids, and transportation systems. This makes them common targets to foreign governments or terrorist groups. A recent cyber crime study found that U.S. companies lose about $250 billion per year through intellectual property theft, and another $114 billion lost due to cybercrime, a number that rises to $338 billion when the cost of downtime due to crime are taken into account. Those numbers are from 2013 and have been growing since. With companies losing this much money every year, it is easy to see how data security and customer privacy become a top priority. But they can't do it alone. This is where the real challenge falls. Currently, companies and organizations are extremely vulnerable to cyber attacks for two main reasons. The first being that there's not enough attention being focused on the area of cyber attacks from the company's executives and boards. A recent survey conducted on top companies listed in the New York Stock Exchange shows that nearly half of all respondents indicated that their companies did not have full-time personnel in key privacy and security roles. And 58% of the respondents said their boards are not reviewing their company's insurance coverage for cyber-related risks. Though there is growing recognition of this problem, it needs to be pushed to the forefront of the business world. The second reason companies and organizations are vulnerable is because they need the joint efforts of the government. The United States has adopted a largely self-regulatory, market-based approach to cybersecurity, relying on the private sector to secure its own networks. In keeping with this approach, no federal agency is responsible for defending the civilian domain. There is no national cyber army to help all companies secure their information. Companies are alone in this endeavor. This needs to change if the United States wants to maintain national security and a healthy economy. There needs to be more communication between the private sector and the government about cyberwar. Together, they can provide each other insights and information that they would not otherwise have available. This leads us to the other challenges that the government has to deal with. Cyber warfare is one of the largest national security problems that the United States government is facing. The threats and risks of cyberspace are still being uncovered. This makes creating new cyber legislation and policy difficult. This uncharted territory, combined with the lack of government experience in this area, makes this challenging. The government must create new cyber policies and maintain other important relationships if they want to avoid any major national security problems. Creating new cyber policy is much easier said than done. Sam Lyles, a professor of cyber forensics at Purdue University, summarized this debate when he said, "If we have the capability of using something that we disrupt, degrade, or deny an enemy at least than lethal force, we have an ethical conundrum. Should we use this if cyber gives us the capability? Perhaps we're morally and ethically required to use it. On the other hand, if that weapon can be turned around and used against us, perhaps we shouldn't use it." That is precisely what this policy discussion has been about. There is currently no guarantee that the weapons the United States use to protect or defend the country won't be used or replicated by one of their enemies. It is critical importance that legislators remember this fact. The cyber weapons have the potential to cause serious damage on many different levels. New cyber policies need to find a balance between the offense and the defensive of cyberwar. Another key issue that is challenging to the United States is maintaining relationships with foreign countries and governments. This is very important when it comes to creating new policies for cyberwar. Instead of just focusing on just the technological side of this, there may be answers found in a more diplomatic approach to this problem. It has been suggested that the United States create a kind of cyber arms control treaty with other countries. The goal of this type of treaty would be to set clear limitations on the use of a cyber arm. Setting clear boundaries on what constitutes an act of war is a critical step to achieving cyber peace. The United States and foreign countries alike need to have more detail on what is considered to be breaking the law or an act of cyberwar. By no means is this a complete solution for all of cyberspace. However, without this, it will continue to be every country for itself, and society in the United States will be at risk until new policy is in place. This brings us to the potential effects on society. These are genuine and should not be taken lightly by any means. The cyber challenges that the military, governments, and businesses previously mentioned all influence the overall health of society. They are all connected. Until all parts of society can come together and work on this problem, the threat will remain. The dangers of cyber warfare affect critical infrastructure, the overall safety of citizens living in the United States, and that leads to great costs and expenses. By having critical infrastructure dependent on technology, the possible risk of cyber attack goes up. This risk is largely due to the fact that the private sector controls most of the infrastructure and that they are independently responsible for making it secure. This means the U.S. sectors in society, such as utilities, banking, and phone carriers, all are in danger. These subdivisions are essentially the backbone of how contemporary people in society function and perform necessary day-to-day tasks. If these systems are attacked, it threatens the livelihood of millions of people. An attack like this has yet to be seen, but society's dependence on technology and the advancements in cyber attacks are making the possibility of this threat more and more real. That is why it is essential for the government, military, and companies alike to work together on this issue. Citizen safety is also an issue. It is becoming more evident that internet-based attacks have the potential to cause real-world harm to citizens. They can cause tangible destruction in the physical world and can produce harm to any common person living in society. This sentiment is expressed by the government's policy in the Homeland Security Act. This shows that the government is fully aware of the potential that these types of cyber weapons can have and are preparing for that. Lastly, we have the costs and expenses that cyberwar has on society. It is taking more and more time to resolve a single cyber attack, and the average costs incurred to resolve a single attack to a business totals more than $1 million. When businesses have to deal with issues like this, the expenses trickle down to the average person living in society. That means that the consumer has to pay more for products or services, and that the cost of running or starting a business goes up. Lastly, there are still skeptics that argue that the concerns over cyber warfare are overblown. One reason discussions about cyber war have been disconnected from reality is that many commentators fail to grapple with the basic question, what counts as warfare? The nature of cyber attacks are very different than traditional acts of war or destruction. Often skeptics of cyber warfare have trouble believing it's true because they simply can't put an exact definition of it. Another reason skeptics are shy about admitting this problem is due to lack of evidence. Again, technology makes tracking attacks very difficult. There are many different methods that hackers can use to mask the origin of attack. The lack of proof should not deter people from the seriousness of the issue. This needs to change. Just because it is hard to characterize what constitutes as cyber war does not mean it is not a serious threat. Doubters need to come to terms with the idea that you can't specifically define cyber war. The fact that there are many unknowns does not excuse this war from happening. There needs to be a fundamental shift towards this kind of thinking if people want to see improvements in safety. In conclusion, the government must create new policies that work and maintain healthy relationships with foreign countries. It has brought many new concerns to businesses and organizations such as keeping customers' information private, securing data, and preventing theft. It has brought the need to redefine the types of defense strategies used to protect the country. The need to find a balance between the defensive and offensive is essential to maintaining national security. And most importantly, the challenge is having all these areas work together to protect and advance society. The government, military, business, and society are all connected in this cyber war. There must be a joint effort from all.